Good morning and welcome to Behind the Screen. I am JM, and this is a show where we hang out, we talk about games that we love, games that inspire us, games that are beautiful in some way or another, and inspire us to be better game masters, better storytellers, better players, better members of our fandom. And today we're wrapping up a look at Clash, and at the end of it, I want to kind of talk about kind of where I want to go with the channel here in March. I know we talked about doing a science fiction review of Fading Suns and Infinity. And while I enjoy doing those things, I think that maybe I want to talk about some other things. So let's finish up Clash. Now, we've been talking about Clash for the last two episodes. This is our final look at Clash. And I wanted to give some GMing advice, both for Urban Decay and for Jackals. Explain what Vendim is. I've mentioned it several times, and I had somebody in the comments go, "Hey, what's this Vendim thing you keep talking about?" So I figured it would be a good time to talk about that, as well as just some general Clash advice. So, as a GM, you've got a lot of tools to kind of help you run a Clash game. But for Amboria, Vendim, and Jackals, do not underestimate the importance of the downtime actions. The seasonal actions, there is a rhythm built into Jackals that is carried forward into Amboria and into the upcoming Vendim that is very important. In a lot of ways in those games, the players are outsiders. They are those who, in an age where people are huddled together in tight-knit communities, extended families that often multiple generations living in the same house, they are the ones who reject that for whatever reason and go out into the world to find their fortune. Now, the tension there is the fact that the seasonal actions continually draw the players back to these communities and force them to set down roots. So eventually, your players' characters are going to have far much more invested in the local community than they do in going out and stopping another Takan raid or risking their livelihood hunting down some chaotic monster on the edge of town. It's the cycle that we see in the Greek stories. The Greek heroes go out and do their amazing things, and then they tend to found cities and become kings. It's one of the things I'm excited most about expanding out in Vendim is more seasonal actions, from rituals which can bless ships and land, to founding a colony, expanding a city, creating new roads and trade networks. These are things that I'm really excited about showing off in the near future. So don't be afraid to constantly go back to your players and say, "Hey, your character is pretty tied to the community. Do you want to retire them?" Because remind them, if they retire, they get a bonus. If their character dies, they don't. But the other advantage of this is all of these games are really set around a sandbox style of play. Now, yes, Fall of the Children of Bronze is this massive 9-year arcing story, but the idea is that these are the high points in a campaign that really takes place 3/4 yours, 1/4 this kind of backdrop that's going on. And so one of the advantages of this for the GM is that your players start to do some of the heavy lifting for you in fleshing out the setting. They're the ones who establish smithies and temples. They're the ones who create monuments. They're the ones who create patrons telling you who are the most important people in your version of the game. this is great from a GMing perspective in the fact that it means you get to offload some of your world building onto your players. I see everybody trying to figure out how Vendim is spelled. Mark got it right. Mark is the first one that Mark put out. Vendim. Mark, you can have a fate point, an extra fate point at the start of our. Now I'll give you an extra advancement when we make our characters for Vendim on Wednesday nights. And so Tink gets an extra advancement as long as you remember these. That Vendim is Latin for I played, I died, I created a new character. There's something. Oh, it is Tink. So Tink gets the advancement. Mark gets one for being honest. We'll get to Vendim in a bit. So allow your players to invest in the setting and thereby create a better setting for you. In a lot of ways, we tend to play games in sort of the modern era of gaming as, hey, this campaign is a story start to finish and it's done. Clash harkens to an older style where the story continually rolls forward based off what the players do, and it accretes new layers as players die or retire, characters die or retire, hopefully players stay alive. Characters die and retire and add new layers to the game. It is a lot like at least the intro of the Wheel of Time, right? In the Wheel of Time, there are no beginnings or endings. This is merely a beginning. Now, when it comes to running Clash combat, be vicious. And I'm not really even joking about that. I just watched a recent review of Jackals that pointed out that, and I feel like the guy got it, that you're not starting off necessarily as nobody. Like, you're definitely not a Greek god, but your characters have the hit point padding, if you will, to survive. And Mark will probably be adding into the chat right now how deadly Clash actually is. It's not as bad as RuneQuest, but it's not as forgiving as, say, more modern versions of D20 is. So don't be afraid to be vicious. That's part of the feel of Clash. And monster design is vicious. The fact that the dead constantly sap valor. The fact that some things ignore protection and ignore valor. Characters' armor can be destroyed. They can be bleeding. They can be infected with diseases that remove wound boxes. Going out into the world is a dangerous thing. Most players learn how to play Clash by their second or third character. I'm not saying that to be like, there's a barrier of entry. No, Clash just has a lot of moving pieces. One of the players in my last Jackals game that I ran gave him some advice. He asked, hey, how do I play this game? It's the first time playing. Gave him some advice. He read through the character creation section, which has some advice. And he's like, you know what? I've decided to ignore all that. That's totally fine. Like, you could make a character however you want. Character did not survive the first adventure. But he learned, and he continued to move on. So, be vicious with things like traits and Clash points and fate points and cultural virtues. Yeah, there's a lot of moving pieces on the character side, but it allows you to outnumber the players. It's the way the game is designed. But on the same side, judge your group. I set all of the wound values. I have this massive spreadsheet where I went and calculated out all of the wound values for the monsters. And I set them for my game's level of enjoyment. My players like complex tactical fights. My players like struggling to finish off that one foe and feeling like they've accomplished something. If your players don't, I mean, you don't need my permission. As soon as the game got published, it left my hands and entered into your table. But If you want to pull 5 or 10 points off of every monster, do it. It's your table. The other thing to remember that a lot of GMs, I don't think, remember about Clash is, hey, if you want to run monsters where I just roll the dice and read the line that it's on, that's fine. That's kind of one of the features of Clash. But you do have some tactical flexibility in the fact that you technically can select that attack line or any line of a lower value. Maybe you want to pull your punch for whatever reason. Use one of the lower values. Maybe you want to not have this special effect kick off, but have that attack chain start that's, one attack line down. Do it. Also, don't be afraid to design your own ritualist paths and rites. I know that sometimes it can seem kind of daunting to homebrew an entire new class of magic, but I do it all the time, and it's a lot of fun. And in fact, that's one of the things I want to talk about here, maybe looking at the show going forward, doing some more design videos. But the key when developing a rite in Clash, there are 3 things I would say to focus on. First is the economy. How many devotion points and Clash points does it cost? The devotion cost is usually how many times a day do you think that someone should be able to invoke this rite? The more powerful the rite, the more expensive the rite is. The other thing is how easy is it to invoke the rite? If it seems like it would be a complex rite, increase the Clash point cost, because Clash points represent situational awareness. If it does damage, of course, have it take an action, but that's entirely up to you. So that's 1. 2, color within the lines is how I'll put that. There are some things that rites don't do in Jackals, at least. They don't bring people back from the dead. They don't grant wishes. They very rarely grant the ability to see in the dark or negate one of the other aspects of the game. They may soften travel rolls, but they don't negate travel rolls. They may soften light rules, but they don't negate light rules. They may ease scarring rolls, but they don't negate death. That's kind of the feel when it comes to designing rites. I never want to have something that says, this thing that's very important to the core experience of Clash, you don't have to worry about it because you picked this one rite, because that makes it a gimme rite and everyone's going to want it. Additionally, think about, take your initial idea and break it up into 2 or 3 levels. That's usually what I do. I come up with a list of 4 to 8 new rites. I write them out, and then I go, all right, well, this actually can be split up into 2 or 3 things. Here's the core of it, and the other 2 become advancements. Yes, Tink, there's no dark vision in Jackals. Inured to light is something that only chaotic creatures have. Or inured to darkness, I should say. The other thing is create new cultures. Steal them from history. Make up your own. It's very easy. I tried to keep cultures very simple. 2 skill groups, or 2 skills at plus 10%, 2 skills at plus 5%, a couple of cultural virtues, and you're good to go. And the idea here is that everyone's playing humans in Clash. So what really separates us is what our cultures have trained us on. And traits are super easy to create. Pick a skill, and pick a very narrow application of the skill, and you're done. When creating monsters and when creating rites, just know that you're going to have to play test them. I fiddled with rites right up to the final submission deadline on every book that I published in. Same with monsters. You're going to overshoot, you're going to undershoot. Be okay with it. And when designing monsters, one of the most fun things to me is the AI charts, the combat ranges. assign how good of a combat skill your monster has, and then break that up into groups of 10 to 15%. Generally, monsters do nothing or something very weak in the 1 to 15% range, and their highest value hits hard at the maximum number that they roll. And then once I have those values set, I just step them back, play with them, give them a couple of very unique abilities if I feel like they deserve it. That's my advice for running Jackals. Stay focused on the seasonal actions. Don't be stingy with advancements. And homebrew the crap out of it. Yeah. So, going forward, I think I'd like to do pull back a little on my system overviews and my deep dives of reviews. There will still be reviews. In fact, Thursday we're doing a review of this Pine Box Middle School as well as the new Arkham source book from Chaosium. It'll be a horror double feature. And man, are both of those books amazing. I can't wait to talk about them. So when something comes in that just grabs my attention, I'm going to talk about it because it's beautiful and that's what inspires me to do this show. John Doom, this book is amazing. I love it. Tracy, Scott, Ed, and Preston, the art, like the maps for the middle school, and holy crap, the plot point campaign in this book might be the best one that I've read. Not just because it's inspired by Dante's Inferno. So, things that I'm going to be wanting to talk about. I'll do an overview of Infinity and Fading Suns. I've talked about both of those. I really would like to support both Modiphius and Ulysses. I may do a little Forbidden Lands discussion because I think Free League is a great company and produces amazing products. But I want to do some design videos on Vendim. Kind of explain where it's at. Show my design process as I work through creating the new rights for the new cultures in Vendim. I want to talk about high and low storytelling in your campaign. I want to talk about what does it mean to be a storyteller, at least from my point of view. I want to talk about how we can incorporate beauty into our games. The things that excite us, the things that inspire us, things that I open every behind the screen with. So we'll get out of the month-long deep dive series reviews. We'll get out of the some of that, at least for a little while, as long as I have topics to come to mind, and otherwise I'll fall back on product reviews. Yes, John Doom, they're doing Discworld. Did you fill out the survey? Because they want to hear from you. And I have to say, I was talking with somebody about this today. I own all but 2 books of the Conan line. I own all but 2 books of the Infinity line. I've read their Star Trek and their John Carter of Mars books, and I have to say, yes, the game at your table will vary. If you've got a group that's real plugged into Pratchett, it's going to be fantastic. But of all the companies out there, Modiphius's track record on designing games for IPs is stellar. At the very least, we're going to get amazing art and probably a ton of books. I have 2 bookshelves between those 2 game lines. So I am so excited about the Discworld role-playing game. Expect news as we move forward. Yeah, oh, right, Mark, Fallout, Elder Scrolls. I mean, they've done a ton of IP adaptations. And while some of their systems range a little too rules light for me, like Conan and Infinity are kind of on this side, and John Carter of Mars and Dune are kind of on this side. Star Trek's somewhere in the middle. I still think that they're fantastic books and they do a great job with them. So, yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking of going forward. A couple of other pieces of news. Let's talk Vendim real quick. For people who don't know what Vendim is the new campaign setting / sandbox I'm creating. It's based off something that I seeded in the very first Jackals book, that there's been this war between the city-states going on in Malcone, far to the west of the War Road. And if it all comes together, what Vendim will be if the Iliad really inspired Jackals. Vendim is inspired by the Aeneid. The city-state war is over. You play as those ships that make it to this new island this new land after fleeing from the fall of your city-state. And you come to this new land and have to establish your own land, make treaties with other people, explore, fight off new supernatural threats, and some old ones that will be familiar to those of Jackals. I'm looking at streamlining character creation with it. I'm looking at adding some more complexity to the rules, whether it is from weapons or with new seasonal actions. And there will be a massive sandbox to play in for it. So again, think of it as the Aeneid as opposed to the Iliad. I've got some great art that Tink has been doing for it. I'll probably show that off when I do my Vendim discussion video. But I'm very excited about it. So it's in the world of Jackals. It's in Calypsis, but it's a little bit further in the future than the current storyline. Probably about 10 years in the future from end of Fall of the Children of Bronze. About a decade, and then several thousand miles or several thousand miles away. So we'll see. It'll be inspired by, again, where the Romans saw themselves coming from and how they viewed the cultures around them. Again, with its own unique Calypsian twists. So that's it. Thursday we're doing our review, our horror doubleheader of Pine Box Middle School and the new Arkham source book from Chaosium. And Thursday afternoon at 2 o'clock, we'll have our next Beyond the Table. I get to hang out with Tim Brown of Dark Sun fame. We're going to talk about his start of his career at Games Design Workshop, his work on things like 2300 AD and Traveler, and then his time at TSR and Dark Sun. I think we're going to focus on Dark Sun because damn, Dark Sun's cool. And I love that I get to hang out with people and just talk about the games that we love. I've got a list of people that I'll be trying to get back, on board to come on and talk about their games. I've also got a couple of authors that I'm reaching out to. Dragon Kings, is that what you're talking about, John? The spiritual successor to Dark Sun. We'll be looking at that as well. So, that brings us to the end of today's Behind the Screen. Thank you all for coming and hanging out. If you like what you saw or interacted with, leave a comment. Click the like button so the algorithm knows, hey, this is something I'm interested in. And we rolled out the new Patreon, all new levels. There are now dragons. Thank you, Tink, for the amazing dragon art for our Patreon. I mean, of course, the iconic dragon is the logo of the company. And we'll be releasing the bare bones to patrons, I think, on the 15th of this month. So the first adventure, the Storm-Racked Tower of the Embittered Carnifex, will be coming out. Thanks, John. That means a lot, buddy. All right, so until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. I am JM, and this has been Behind the Screen. Until next time, have a good one, everyone.